Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Liners, a series centered around key influencers in the performance marketing space. My name is Joey Liner of Liner Connections. I would appreciate it if you could give me a like on LinkedIn or my YouTube. As you know, are some of the folks that have been watching the series. I've been trying to put out more content, so I appreciate the support. And of course, growing my likes will definitely help. So appreciate the subscriptions there. This week, I am joined by my good friends. This is the first time I've actually had two guests on from the same company, so I'm really excited about this. Peter Vitale and Maverick Levy from Lead Clinic and Encore Insurance. Hey guys, say hello.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us on,
Hey,
Joe.
Yeah, it's
hey
super.
everyone.
Hey, Mav, it's good to see you guys. Thank you both for joining me. I am super pumped to have you guys on today because over the last month or so, I've been seeing a lot of hype about Lead Clinic. So we definitely want to talk about that today. But just I like to give a little backstory on how I met, my guests, and then of course I want you guys to be able to tell your career journeys. But we were introduced through our good friend Rob Seaver, who is the executive director of Leads Council and now called Consumer Consent Council. Rob had introduced us because you guys were, in buying leads and growing out your lead gen business for your insurance agency, and just learning so much about the space and gaining more traction on compliance. And I had started my consulting business, and I think we gelled really well. We first chatted on how I could be able to help you guys add more performance marketing companies, and it's gone pretty well. To my side, I think I've really loved working with you both. So thank you both for joining. Is that how you see it too?
That's definitely how we see it, Joey. And thanks for having us on. But yeah, it's been a pleasure to work with you over the past several months, and navigating the performance marketing industry is somewhat challenging, and it's having someone who's been in this business for a long time to kind of shepherd us through it has been extremely beneficial, as you know. So thank you.
Thank you, and yeah, if you can, Maverick, tell us a little bit about yourself, and so I think it'll help give context on once we get into Lead Clinic and what you guys are doing. But give us a little context on your background and what how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Joey, and thanks again for having us on. It's always cool to tell people in the lead gen world, we're working with Joey Liner. It always is like,
Oh,
okay, they take us a little more seriously once we tell them that we're working with you.
Yeah.
In all honesty, I'm being serious about that. But
thank you.
yeah, some background about myself. I'm 24 years old. I got into an entrepreneurial spirit when I was much younger. My family's business is tax resolution, fighting the government for a living. It's a very unique market that not a lot of people understand. And as time evolved, I really just was an entrepreneur, starting businesses, building businesses from the ground up. I'll be the first to say I've had some terrible failures, but I've always learned from my failures and continue to push on and figure out why I failed. So, by no means have I done everything right. I'm in the place I am because I failed, and I've learned from that. And then when you succeed, you really look at, okay, why did I succeed? How did I get here? What can I do to replicate this process? So, my background, we could sit and talk about it for an hour, but to keep it simple and short for this specific conversation, Peter is the one that brought me into Lead Clinic when he really started diving in and figured out this was the path he was going to take. And what I'll say to my background about right now is I think that my background coming from someone that wasn't in lead generation or performance marketing, wasn't in the insurance vertical by any means at a certain extent. I think that that is really what sets me aside in this industry. And when we have these conversations, because my head doesn't think like the typical insurance agency owner and doesn't think like the typical performance marketing person, right? So I have that different perspective. And also, I mean, it's obvious. I'm usually the youngest person on a call in a room wherever that is, and because of that I've learned when to shut my mouth and just absorb information, or when it's time to speak up and say, hey guys, we're in modern day and this is how things are being done today and how the future consumers see the world. So that's a little bit about myself, but thank you again, Joey, for having us on. I'm excited to dive into this conversation.
Yeah, super excited to have you as well. Peter, you want to give a little
Sure.
backstory on yourself and maybe just flow that right into what is
Yeah.
Lead Clinic? Because I've been
Sure.
seeing so much about this over the last month or two, some really cool hype videos. So I wanted
Yeah.
to get you on because I wanted to be able to tell the lead gen community what's going on here.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for having us on, Joey. And I'll say something about Maverick's introduction that really is, we've had similar life paths so far, right? I come from a family of entrepreneurs. At a very young age, slightly older than what Maverick is right now, I opened my own all-state insurance agency. So really for over a decade now, I've owned and operated independent insurance agencies on both the independent and the captive side. As part of that, right, I was a huge consumer of leads from many of the large lead generation companies that many people know in the marketplace. I always felt as a lead consumer that it wasn't a transparent experience. It wasn't always the most seamless experience. It certainly wasn't always a horrible experience, but sometimes it was. And as I really started to get my arms around it when we opened a new independent agency, I really said, I got to get into lead gen, see what's going on. I expected to like come in, look for 3 months, see, okay, everything looks good. Like I'm comfortable with the amount of money we're spending. I don't think anything nefarious is happening, and then just move back into my normal life as an insurance agent. As I kind of tell people, I fell in love with lead generation because I couldn't figure it out. I
Right.
went to events, I talked to people. Everyone was very not tight-lipped about it, but everyone was guarded. And I realized that I wasn't really learning much, and that I had to keep going at it because this is why I fell in love with it. It didn't make sense to me. And like, I just can't stop until I put a puzzle together. So, as I built up relationships, though, in this industry, there are a lot of great people who could do a lot of cool things and help us really, find the better quality leads, where they're coming from, if they exist, and how to get those into our hands to grow our agency. And then as I got more and more involved in this, I said, this is so interesting. I want to help other insurance agents. I want to help other people who are like me. And that's really what Lead Clinic is and what Lead Clinic's about. Is today we operate primarily in the property and casualty insurance vertical, finding insurance agencies of all sizes. It doesn't matter how big they are. Insurance agents love to measure their success based on how much premium they write on an annualized basis, even though those policies originated 25 years ago. To me, that doesn't really matter much. We work with growth focused insurance agents, whether they have 30 million in premium or $30 in premium. If they're growth minded, we help them grow. But we Lead Clinic's about transparency. Like at the end of the day, that is how Lead Clinic functions fundamentally differently than our competitors. And that's the mission we're on, is to bring transparency into this space. And there's transparency for a lot of folks in lead gen. They just tend to be the biggest buyers or the largest insurance carriers. But insurance agents, Joey, in my mind, are the backbone of the American economy, right? They're small business owners
Yeah.
employing people in local communities, putting their own money, not someone else's money, not private equity money, not, they're not publicly funded Wall Street, companies, making money off other people's money. They're risking their family's financial future. And those are the people that we want to help. And that's really what Lead Clinic's mission is.
I love it. And I've never seen in my 20 years doing this, I've never seen the connection like you're talking about because it's seemed very siloed. Lead gen companies run their own path, insurance agents kind of run their own path. There's never been really a good way to effectively communicate in the middle. Maverick, like, do you? I think Peter just touched on obviously the foundation or kind of the eye opening moment, but like, what got you really excited to help? Like you mentioned earlier, how you joined forces and Peter brought you in, but like, what gets you excited to really change the game here, my friend?
Yeah, that's a great question. Before I dive into that, I'll say that I tell Peter this at least once a week, if not a couple times a week. None of this is possible without Peter. Literally, it had to be Peter, because you have to come from the background of owning an insurance agency.
Agreed.
And, I'll kind of toot Peter's horn here by saying he created some of the fastest growing insurance agencies in the country, but at a very young age. And you have to have that background, but you also have to have the background of buying leads at scale, which he was
Right.
also doing.
Right.
Without those two things together, none of this is possible. And then
Right.
let's talk about the third for a second, is the time. Peter had, and I, quite frankly, I joined him a little after he started this, but we've been on this journey and just publicly launched a week ago, and we've been working on this for 2 years. 2 years.
Yes.
You don't see any other person, at least I don't see any other person in this industry taking the time, money, and resources to build an operation like we've built, and built a process and procedure. And you talk about transparency, build that into those processes that we've built out already. So first and foremost, the eye-opening moment was, I'll never forget it. I live in South Florida. I flew to Michigan to meet with Peter about this, and we were sitting at a hotel, and he turns around his laptop screen and he has Bobberdo. For those of you that know what it is, I assume you do if you're listening to this podcast. I had no idea what the hell I was looking at. But what I knew is that I believed in Peter. I believed in the vision, because, I'm a solutions oriented person. And here we saw a problem and we created a solution that is going to be here forever. And it's really going to be something that Peter and I say all the time is going to flip this vertical, and honestly, the whole industry upside down, because we're coming at it from such a different approach. But to your moment, I think one of the most eye-opening experiences I've had thus far was sitting at LeadsCon in Vegas with Peter and a bunch of other insurance agency owners at a table, having drinks, talking, and really getting to see them understand what we're building. It was all of the dots connecting at one time. And when you see agency owners talk about this, they're not always like the most excited. They're like, do I feel like I'm getting ripped off a little bit? Right. But to see the connection and the charisma and the enthusiasm that they all had when we were talking about the product we're building, they were so excited. They were ready. They were, when can we start buying leads? Right. So that is really what got me excited in kind of putting it all together and seeing everything we've worked on. Like I said, we just publicly launched. Yeah, we've had clients we've been onboarding in the background, but we just publicly launched because we wanted to do it right. And I think that's what sets us aside from the rest. And that's really what brought it out to me, is we're moving forward on the right path.
Well said, man. I think we all live in a world where the pressure to get something done so fast and produce revenue, and to make sure that we go to market as quick as possible. But I will say the methodical approach that you guys have placed, and the preparation, the foundation, the ability to go out and meet both sides, like I said, the insurance community, go deeper and understand their pain points. Obviously, Peter, like you said, lived it firsthand, but be able to get a bigger sample set and talk to a wider range of agents, in addition to speaking to as many folks as you can within the lead gen community. You didn't rush, and you did it right. And I think so timing wise, 2020 was just an insane year for growth in the auto space, for especially like the direct to consumer model. In performance marketing companies just had record years, along with the carriers. But the last couple of years have been tough in the space, and I think we've all tried to adjust in the lead gen community to find a new approach for fulfillment or connection, satisfying consumer demand in a different way. Peter, why do you think the independent model makes sense now more than ever?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it makes sense more than ever because we've seen so many insurance carriers focused on direct to consumer. And they were basically, some of them were very kind of outspoken about it at their launches, that they would not use insurance agents. And they've all come back around to see the light that their distribution is really expensive without agents. And they think, or they thought at the time, or some consultant told them at the time, doing some financial modeling, that, wow, your insurance agents are a big expense. No, it's money going out, and it's an expense, no doubt. But right, just money going out doesn't mean anything, right? We have to measure things in value.
Right.
So what's the value of that money? Turns out the value of that money is a lot bigger value to the carrier going to agent, when that money goes to agents versus when it goes to direct advertising. Direct to consumer is a very expensive business model. I think honestly, Joey, that when we see the insurance carriers that have changed course, these are smart, sophisticated, business organizations that drive hundreds of millions of dollars and some of them billions of dollars of revenue in. They've made my case for me. The numbers speak to themselves. And, I think that's really why, the agent model works. And look, for my entire career, people saying, agents are going away. We've seen CEOs of big insurance companies. One of them likes to refer to the agency force as human modems. What an insulting thing to say. And, it's this level of kind of people who think that looking at a bunch of numbers can tell you everything, but taking out the human element of that and not really focusing on it. When you take that in, you see that. And now on the backside, the numbers make sense and make the case for us too. And those carriers have capitulated and changed course. And I think that is what really makes the independent agency model attractive. And, the captive agency model as well is still performing. If you look at the big captive carriers, their agent bases make up a significant portion still of their premium today in force. So.
Thank you for breaking that down, especially like on the insurance side. You've lived through, I think it really helps put some context out here, especially the passion that you both have for this model and growth. Speaking of that, I've seen both of you at shows just be your energy's infectious. You guys have a very good approach to just meeting people and really getting to know their business. And I've witnessed it. And so, how do you plan on conveying? How do you plan on passing that energy through to your agents, Maverick? Like, how do you want them to know how hard you guys are out there doing due diligence and fighting for them, and making sure that they're in good hands with Lead Clinic?
I think the old cliche saying that the proof is in the pudding is what's going to be apparent to the agency owners here, right? The product that we're going to deliver into their CRM or wherever we're going to deliver the leads into is going to speak for itself when they see the difference between the leads we're supplying for them and the other vendors that they're buying from, quite frankly. And, taking a step back, you talk about us at shows.
Yeah.
You gotta think about this, Joey. When Peter started this, Peter was the one going to these shows alone,
Right.
not knowing anyone, not knowing anything, just walking up to people, starting a conversation, learning about what they do. And for a second, I want to break apart going to these shows because the lead generation industry is a fascinating one. And I'll laugh about this, but I always notice you call it performance marketing. I'll always call it lead generation, Joey. But, that's what I'll always call lead generation.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, Peter and I have some principles in our business, connecting the dots and problem solving. We talked about problem solving, right? Connecting the dots is number two. Connecting the dots in lead generation is vital. Everyone works with everyone at some point. There's overlay with everyone at some point. And so really getting to know not only people, but the kind of person that they are, because it says a lot about the business that they run. Going out to dinner with people, having drinks with people, talking about their family, right? Talking about the life at home outside of business is something that Peter and I focus on because it says a lot about the person. And that's part of why we love you, Joey, right? I don't think there's a single person, quite honestly, in lead generation that has anything bad to say about Joey. Every person we talk to, I said in the beginning, I wasn't joking, we are respected more so that we work with Joey Liner. That's
Oh,
the simple
thank you.
truth of it because you have built such a name for yourself. So kudos to you for that. But it comes down, I bring this up because it's meeting the right people. And that's the same for our agency owners. You talk about how that's going to trickle down into our agency owners. It's about meeting the right people and letting them know the process and the history we've gone through to build this business, but also the type of relationships that we have with our clients is, I can promise you, drastically different than the other vendors or companies out there because we care, right? Peter's taking phone calls 10 p.m. at night, 11 p.m. at night, just to have that extra conversation, just to make them know that we're working in a way that's most beneficial for them. And we're doing things and putting things in a way that other people, it's not that they're not capable, they're just not doing it. That's the whole point about transparency. You know, we call ourselves lead clinic, right? The reason for that is maybe it's kind of funny and it's humorous, but it's serious. We view each client as a patient.
Right.
On our website, it says, just like a doctor's office, you fill out paperwork before so that we can see what your health looks like. It's the same thing as a doctor's office at Lead Clinic. You get that same attention to detail that's very important to us. And our prescription is going to be a product that's going to work for you, right? What kind of leads are you looking to buy? That's our prescription that we're going to give to you. So that trickle down effect, that energy of connecting with the right people, meeting the right people and networking trickles down to those agency owners in a way where it's our relationship with them, but also about the way in which they receive our product and how they receive our product.
Yeah, well said, man. And I think your attention to detail, your it stands out, and I hope that your agents really will. One, I know they'll benefit, but they really appreciate it. And then, and speaking to that, I've never seen buyers, lead buyers, have as much passion behind compliance. Compliance is not a sexy topic. Let's be honest here. And so you guys, obviously we work in making sure that we adhere to industry standards. Regulatory environment is changing around us, but what I've witnessed over the last year working with you guys is your passion to get compliance right, and to that extent, Peter, I think you're on the board of Reach, Eric Troutman's um, group that is doing amazing things out there, helping really connect the bridge the gap between the regulatory environment and and performance marketing from a self-regulatory perspective. But yeah, I'd love, where does that come from, man? And give us a little bit of what you're working on.
Yeah, so I think of compliance. I don't think of it as compliance at all. Obviously, that's a big portion of it, but I think of it as respect for
Yeah.
the consumer. I think that compliance, if we think about compliance in the traditional sense of how firms think of it, it's often what are our legal obligations? How close to our legal obligations can we get while driving up the performance of our campaigns up as fast as possible, make as much money as fast as possible? That's how people often think of compliance. I think it's a flawed approach, quite frankly. I think that respect for the prospective consumer is something that's lost on all of us, not all of us, but on many of us. And that is the approach that I never want to take. I think that we have to look at the prospective consumers that we engage with as our customers, just like the agents who pay for the leads are the customers. And it doesn't come down to just meeting our regulatory, obligations, right? And quite frankly, that's challenging enough for a lot of companies, challenging enough for us too. It's a complex regulatory environment out there. States making different laws, the federal government, making different laws, and then administrative rules. It's tough, and people make mistakes, and that happens in any business, right?
That's right.
But when you take that a step further and you say, I'm not just worried about compliance, I want the prospective consumer journey to be a beautiful thing, and I want to focus on that, you're going to get more engaged leads, right? You're going to get people who want to talk, and figuring out how to get the right person to the right agent or the right carrier is critical too. So I think that that's why we're so compliance focused. Is one, we want to make sure that whatever the legal obligations that we have are the minimum standards we're meeting. I truly believe the minimum standards, but I believe that the respect for the person on the other end of the phone or computer screen is really what drives us to care about compliance. Meeting minimum legal obligations isn't really an exciting topic at all. And it's not that interesting to me. It's like, what can we do? We have to do that, obviously.
Right.
But we also have to drive that experience to be a respectful interaction. And I think that's what really drives us there. And, Reach is doing great things. There are a lot of trade organizations that
Yeah.
are doing great things and representing buyers. some and buyers and sellers. And
Yeah.
sometimes I will say though, Joey, sometimes there are people in this industry, and I will say this, and I love them all as much as I love my insurance agents almost
Yeah.
now. But there are people in this industry who have their head in the sand, I think, and think that a lot of the illegal conduct or shady conduct is just happening from overseas firms and stuff like that. And I would honestly suggest that there's no evidence of it. There's no evidence that it happens or doesn't. No one has hard data. It's just this anecdotal stuff. And I think we all have to take a good look around. And folks are not very self-aware in this industry. And I think that's what drives me towards it, is because no one can provide me facts and figures. But look, everyone's phone's blowing up. People don't answer the phone. And it's a societal problem today, because when iPhone puts a feature on that says don't answer phone numbers that aren't in my phone, but if I was a parent, I would never turn that feature on, because what if my kid's with someone else and there's an emergency and the other kid's dad is not in my phone book, but I need to get there? That's the problems that have come up in this industry, but not being respectful towards other people's time and attention and just calling them a million times. And insurance agents do this too. So that's why we're so compliance focused. It's a respect issue.
Love it. I agree. I've said it on record too on my shows that we have to do a better job putting the consumer first. Period. And start there, right? Like the industry in general has just gotten really bad over the last decade of revenue, monetization of and treating the consumer not like a consumer. So put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah.
We don't. I know. I love having these conversations with you. We don't have a crystal ball, but like, any thoughts as we kind of close out here? What are your thoughts on like the where we're going to see the rest of 2024 or 2023 carrying momentum into 2024 for the auto space?
So I'll say this simply by, at this point last year, people were telling me that auto would come back in Q1 of 2023.
Right.
I was very transparent with everyone, and I would just tell them, I think you're wrong. I don't see that happening at all. And it did happen a little bit, so I was partially wrong. I'll always admit when I'm wrong, right? We saw a very large carrier that came back kind of hot and heavy in Q1, and turns out that was very short-lived. I do believe that now, looking at it, I'm in the same position now. 2023 is over. There's not going to be growth. You're seeing carriers pull out of states now.
Yep.
In mass. It's the inflationary environment's creating a big problem. And an expert that I talked to in that particular trend told me that could last for another 2.5 years.
Wow.
So I'm not sure I think that certain components of auto insurance profitability will be that long tail. But I think that other parts will be fixed a little faster. Do I think it'll be Q1 of 2024? I'm not convinced. I think it will be a much more logical progression, okay?
Right.
Which is what nobody in this industry wants to hear. Everyone in this industry wants to move from 0 to 500
Of course.
fast. That's the critical flaw. And what you've said about us, Joey, right? We built this over 2 years because taking time and being focused, that's the most rewarding thing in business. But everyone wants to go from 0 to 500. So I think it'll be a much more gradual ramp up. And I don't think carriers will make the same mistakes that certain carriers made last year. And they will turn things on in a much more gradual, a much more methodical way. So I don't think we'll ever see it flip the switch. But I think that'll happen over a 2 or 3 quarter basis. I'm very, very hoping that that trend starts in 2024 and ends in 2024, but it'll be over a 2 or 3 quarter basis in my view, anyways. Hopefully by Q2 of 2024, that starts is what my current estimation is. But
I appreciate you putting it out there, because some people like shy away from. It's not like we're not trying to move the markets here, but
yeah.
I just love you're so dialed into this, and you've been, like I said, we've talked about it over the year, just really, and everybody wants hyper growth, but I think again, making the argument for the independent model, putting the consumer first, I think is a really cool, exciting path here, and I'm excited to follow the lead clinic journey. Like, Maverick, tell us How can most of the folks in the performance marketing, where are you guys going to be putting some content out, socials, and how can the performance marketing, or as you say, the lead gen community, help support your growth?
Yeah, now this is where I get to give our shout outs. I appreciate that. So our first shout out will be to Joey for being
Oh,
such an influential person to us and helping connect the dots with some of the right people to really help with the growth of Lead Clinic. We talk about it often. I think it's my third or second time highlighting you on this podcast, but I do it for a reason, and it's
thank
because
you,
Joey, Peter knows how much I love you. You know how much I love you. So,
thank you.
thank you first and foremost. So, a shout out for Joey. But now
Feelings right
I'll
back
give
at
our
you, brother.
thank you, thank you. Lead Clinic is everywhere and anywhere you can find us: YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. At Lead Clinic on Instagram, we're at underscore Lead Clinic. LinkedIn, obviously a huge place for us. So if you can go right now and follow us and like our page across all the platforms, or choose your favorite one and follow us there. We also have a Lead Clinic podcast that we have started to release some episodes with. So you can find that podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, but it is actually also a visual podcast as well. So if you want to go on YouTube, you can search Lead Clinic and find the podcast there. Depending upon when the viewers watch or listen to this podcast, there may be one or two episodes up. So it just
Yes,
depends on that. But we'll be releasing content on a regular schedule there. And then, of course, I mean, Peter and I always feel free to email us, maverick@leadclinic.com, peter@leadclinic.com. Like I said, if you can't get a hold of us, then I think it's something wrong with you and not us, because we try and make ourselves as accessible as possible. And we love communication and we try and be everywhere. So we've really ramped up our marketing efforts and have that ball rolling. So for all of you listening and or watching, if you could take a second after this ends and, like I said, go
yes,
like our page, follow us, share it, give some engagement on it, it would mean the world to us. And we're excited to see where this thing goes. And hopefully we can come back on here, next June and see how far we've progressed.
done. Absolutely. And I will say, I know, like we talked about, how much the work you guys have put into this. When if anybody's listening, worth your time to follow these guys, they're not gonna put out bullshit. They're not gonna half-ass this. The stuff that they publish will be very valuable. So you'll see Liner Connections or Joey, myself. I'll be sharing it because the space needs it. You guys are doing amazing, and I encourage every lead gen company, technology platform within their space to pay attention here. This time next year, I think, like I said, that we're going to show tremendous growth. I know that you guys are talking to so many different agencies every week now, so I really appreciate you both coming on, and the passion that you have for both sides. Like you said, usually it's one track. You're loyal deep into the insurance agency, and you're in your own silo. But I really appreciate you guys really trying to help bridge the gap here. You both are amazing people, and I encourage everybody to give them both a follow. So thank you both for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Joey.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
awesome. Thanks, guys.